Millionaire discovers Maid, protecting his paralyzed son, and he shudders at the truth. In Austin, Texas, on a sweltering Thursday afternoon in September, that opening line cut straight into the life of Richard "Rick" Carter. He had come home early. A rare move for the 47-year-old man who ran 3 textile mills across central Texas. The black BMW slid quietly into the garage behind the Colonial Revival home, nestled between rows of live oaks and crepe myrtles. The engine had barely gone silent when Rick caught the sound of an argument drifting from the rose garden. The calm but firm voice of Paula Monroe, the housekeeper of 8 years, and the sharp, cutting tone of Lauren Mitchell, his 28-year-old second wife. "Step aside, Paula. I'm his mother now." Lauren leaned in, one hand gripping the armrest of David Carter's wheelchair, his 12-year-old son, thin, with eyes wide like morning stars. Paula stood blocking the path, both hands locked on the push handles. "Please, Miss Lauren," Paula said, her voice tight but steady. "Dr. Harris said David shouldn't stay long in the sun. His medication makes his skin sensitive." David whispered, "She's right. I feel hot." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Don't argue with adults, kid. Life doesn't hand out shade to the weak. Hide from the sun, you'll stay weak forever." Rick froze behind a crepe myrtle, watching the scene distort in the burning light. Paula, 52, her gray hair pulled back neatly, stood like the last marker post between the boy and the blaze. David gripped his armrest, fear and gratitude mingling in his eyes. Lauren, nails painted white, dress gleaming, gave the chair a small push, just enough to jolt the wheels closer to the sun. "Move," she snapped again, louder. "This child is spoiled rotten." "Enough." Rick stepped forward. His shadow cut across the lawn, stopping at Lauren's shoes. He didn't raise his voice. It was flat as still water. "Did you just say you have full authority over my son?" Silence hung heavy. Lauren paled, then lifted her chin. "You told me I'd run this household. I've had enough. I'm your wife, not a nursemaid for a crippled child." The word "crippled" slipped from her lips, sharp as a blade. Rick closed his eyes a moment. 2 years earlier, the accident had stolen Catherine Carter, his first wife, and taken David's ability to walk. A year later, in that hollow emptiness, he'd married Lauren, thinking the boy needed a mother's shadow. Since then, the small signs had grown. Her frown when David chewed too slowly, her sighs during therapy, the irritation flashing whenever wheels caught on a rug. He hadn't looked. He buried himself in mills, balance sheets, calls and reports. Things he could control, unlike the mess of his home. "I'm just teaching him toughness." Lauren lowered her tone, feigning calm. "Texas sun makes him stronger." "This sun burns his skin," Paula shot back, unmoved. "And what about the doctor's orders?" Lauren sneered. "Life doesn't come with prescriptions every time it gets hard." Then she shoved hard. The wheelchair rolled out of the shade, sunlight licking David's pale arm. The boy winced, gasping. Rick strode forward, gripped his son's hand, and pulled the chair firmly back under the eaves. "Inside. Son." He turned to Paula. "Go with him." The glass door shut behind them. The heat and 2 adults remained. "You call that authority?" Rick asked, voice still level. Lauren crossed her arms. "I'm young. I have a future. I didn't sign up to babysit someone else's burden for life. Don't call my son a burden." Rick's stare didn't waver. "You don't have to love his struggles, but you don't get to hurt him." "He's coddled," Lauren shot back. "The world is cruel. He has to learn pain." Rick glanced at the garden. Catherine's roses, once crimson, wilted at the edges under the sun. He remembered her words when planting the first root. So David grows up surrounded by beauty. And now, beauty was being wielded to excuse cruelty. "We'll finish this tonight," Rick ended, leaving Lauren under the burning sky. Inside, Paula stood at David's back, her hand resting gently like a soft brake. "Thank you," Rick said. "It's nothing, sir," Paula replied, her gaze softening. David looked up. "Dad, I'm okay." Rick squeezed his shoulder. "I'm listening." He didn't yet know the quarrel in the garden was only the first needle prick to a hidden pouch. When Catherine's wooden box would finally be opened, when a letter revealed the name of a long-lost younger brother, everything would turn. Sunlight no longer a blade, but the light that showed who would stay. The next morning, downtown Austin shimmered blue like reeds in the wind. From the high floor of a glass tower, Rick Carter stared down at City Hall, his mind empty. Lauren's words from last night still rang in his ears. "I married you for money and status. I never intended to be a mother to that special needs child." He set his coffee cup down and dialed home. "Paula, come to the office. I need you." An hour later, Paula Monroe sat across the walnut desk. Her hands were clasped, the calm posture of a woman who had weathered many storms but never learned surrender. "Paula," Rick began, "you've been with my family 8 years. You helped Catherine through labor. You carried David through fevers. Today, I need the truth." Paula drew a long breath, meeting his eyes. "Sir, I didn't want to trouble you. I know how busy you are. But if you ask, I'll tell it all." From the 3rd month after the wedding, Miss Lauren grew impatient. She wouldn't let David choose his meals, scolded him if he watched TV too long, said he was faking tears. Then the words grew harsher. She called him a punishment, said if she'd known she'd have to care for a broken child, she never would have married. Rick's throat went dry. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "You came home very late," Paula answered, voice soft but not weak. "She threatened to fire me. But when you weren't home, who truly cared for David? I did. Every afternoon, I did his therapy with him, read books with him, watered the rose garden Mrs. Catherine planted. David loves the first red rose bush most. She planted it while pregnant, saying she wanted him to grow up surrounded by kindness." Rick rose, paced a few steps, then stopped as if realizing his shoes no longer fit. "Does he mention his mother?" Paula nodded, her eyes glistening. "Every day. He's afraid he'll forget her voice." "I found an old birthday recording on Mrs. Catherine's phone. Sometimes I let him listen. Each time, he hugs the phone and sits in silence for a long while." The words stripped away Rick's last layer of armor. He turned toward the window, his shoulders trembling. He hadn't cried in 2 years, not since Catherine's funeral. "Mr. Rick," Paula spoke gently, like laying a wool blanket over a shiver. "There's something Mrs. Catherine told me before she passed. She said only if the new wife didn't love David should I give you something. Something that could change your life." Rick turned back, quickly brushing a tear. "What is it?" "The wooden box she left behind. Inside is a handwritten letter for you." The drive home felt longer than ever. Rick steered as if through a tunnel, the far end holding Catherine's last message. Black ink on paper, a voice without breath but still carrying moral weight. Paula was waiting on the porch. David napped upstairs. Lauren had texted she'd be late. Paula led him into the old room, the one he had avoided for 2 years because it still smelled of Catherine. On the bed sat a small wooden box, worn smooth from many hands. "She gave it to me 3 days before the accident," Paula said. "Told me I'd know when the time came. I never opened it. She said only you." The lid creaked. The scent of old paper rose like a trace of memory. Inside lay a white envelope trimmed in cream, inked in fountain pen. Richard. Rick traced the letters. Catherine's handwriting whispered, clear yet tender. He sat on the bed's edge, drew a deep breath, and slid it open. My dearest Rick. The first words stole the air from his chest. He read slowly, afraid to tear the fragile thread. The letters spoke of Matthew, the younger brother, 3 years his junior, who had disappeared when Rick was 16. His parents had said he went to live with a distant aunt. Catherine wrote, "That wasn't the truth." The words pried open a door he had nailed shut for decades. Rick looked up, dazed. Paula sat quietly, asking nothing. "I need to finish this," he said. And he bent again, letting the letter lead him into the next part of the truth, the part he had fled for 20 years. Matthew never went to live with an aunt, Catherine had written, her pen strokes firm. When your parents discovered he had learning difficulties, they placed him in a state facility out of fear. He would shame the family. I stumbled on the truth while researching genetic history before carrying David. I hired a private investigator. For 16 years, Matthew lived in the system. At 18, he got out, found work as a janitor at Lincoln Elementary in Denton. He lives simply, decently, and most importantly, he remembers you every day. He carries your 15th birthday photo in his wallet. Rick swallowed hard. Memories flared. 2 boys with arms slung over each other's shoulders under a wooden porch, smiles wide as the sky. Then one day, emptiness. Adults had said he went away, and Rick had believed because he wanted to. The letter went on. If your new wife does not love David, find Matthew. Our son needs an uncle who knows unconditional love. Family is not only blood, it is those who choose to stand beside you. Inside the box are his address and a few recent photos. Don't be afraid to start again. At the bottom, 47, Independence Street, Denton, Texas. A postscript. Paula knows everything and will help you. When Rick folded the letter, his eyes were still blurred with tears. Paula quietly pulled a chair closer. Have you met Matthew? Rick rasped. Yes, Paula said. Mrs. Catherine asked me to check on him. He's good. Naturally patient with children who need extra time. Speaks little, smiles gently. Rick looked at the wooden box, so small, yet it had just broken 20 years of silence. Tomorrow morning, Denton, he said. Paula nodded. And at the half-closed door, a shadow passed by. Lauren had heard enough to sense the threat to her millionaire wife throne. The next morning dawned clean and blue. David sat up in bed, still drowsy. Dad, where are we going? Denton, Rick answered. Sitting down at his son's eye level. To meet Uncle Matthew, my brother. The boy blinked. Will he, like me? He glanced down at his legs in the wheelchair. Rick laid a hand over his. You are perfect as you are. Good people will see you before they see any limits. Paula wheeled him to the door, checking the water bottle, light jacket, and medication in the bag. They merged onto I-35, the gray ribbon of road taut as a drawn thread. Fields, old gas stations, wooden churches flickered past. Dad, David suddenly asked, is Mom Catherine angry at you? Rick kept his eyes on the road. If she were angry, she wouldn't have written. She believed I'd turned back when it mattered. David smiled faintly and rested his head against the cushion. Independence Street appeared under the slanting sun. Number 47. A soft blue house with a white fence and a yard of trembling purple flowers. From the porch came the sound of an acoustic guitar strumming a gentle folk tune. A middle-sized man was watering flower pots with a brass can. Matthew. 20 years gone, but Rick knew him instantly, not only by his face, but by the way he poured full attention into small tasks, as though every act deserved to be done right. Matthew looked up. Their eyes met across the windshield. The watering can slipped from his hand, water splashing a trail. A smile spread across his face. Wide, true, just like on that porch long ago. Rick stepped out, his knees weak. They moved toward each other, stopping half a meter apart, awkward as two boys who'd just found their long-lost friend. "Hi," Matthew said, voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry," Rick replied. "For all the years—" "I know," Matthew nodded. "We were just kids when it happened." Paula eased David down. Seeing the wheelchair, Matthew's eyes welled. Rick bent slightly. "My son, David." Matthew crouched low, bringing himself level with the boy's gaze. A natural gesture from someone who understood respect begins at eye height. "Hello there," he smiled. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you." David swallowed. "Do you like plants? Your garden's amazing." Matthew chuckled. "I love them. Even have the kind your mom loved, red roses." 2 hours later, the yard at 47 had become an open-air classroom. Matthew guided David's hands over leaves, let him breathe scents, told stories from Lincoln Elementary, mimicked teachers' voices until the boy laughed aloud. A round, full sound Rick realized he hadn't heard in ages. Lunch was chicken sandwiches and lemonade. Paula opened a box of strawberries she'd brought. While cleaning up, Rick spoke plainly. "Come live with us. My house has plenty of room. Family should be close." Matthew hesitated. "I'm used to a simple life. Afraid I'd get lost in a big house." David cut in, honesty sharp as glass. "You don't have to change who you are. Big house, but sometimes lonely. With you it won't be." Matthew looked at Rick, then at David, and smiled gently. "Give me a few days." "No pressure," Rick nodded. "But my home, our home, will always be open." Before they left, Matthew squeezed his brother's hand. "One piece of advice. Kids like David, like I once was, can tell right away when adults are faking it. Love him real every day." On the drive back, David slept with a smile still curved on his lips. Paula whispered, "Catherine must be smiling now." Rick gripped the wheel tighter. He knew when they returned to Austin, he'd have to close another door. Lauren, who had overheard last night, was waiting. But this time, he was ready to stand in the sun and shield his son. When Rick, Paula, and David returned to Austin, the sky was already dark. From the cobblestone street, they saw every light in the house blazing as if it were a stage. At the threshold, 2 suitcases sat side by side. Lauren stood in a black evening gown, perfume sharp in the air, lips painted a taunting red. She tapped her nails against the luggage. "Family reunion go well. Hope it's the last." Rick glanced at Paula. "Take David upstairs, close the door," he said quietly. David clutched Paula's hand, shuffling along, looking back as if to ask, "Are you okay, Dad?" Rick gave a subtle nod. The bedroom door shut upstairs, leaving only 2 adults and the glare of too many lights below. "I heard enough," Lauren began, her eyes tilted with disdain. "Your dead wife's letter. The long-lost brother. The sweet little reunion plan. And of course I'm not going to waste my life raising a wheelchair kid and harboring some broke relative." "Thank you for saying it plain," Rick replied, voice even. "I don't blame you for not loving David. You can't force love, but I won't accept lies or you hurting him." Lauren laughed, a brittle cackle. "You're moral when it suits you. You think money is a magic trick. Build a big house, plant roses, hire help, and you've done your duty as a father. Newsflash, the world doesn't pity anyone. That boy is a burden for life. Rick heard the word burden hit the hardwood like a weight hurled from a balcony. David already lost his mother in the accident that took his legs. He doesn't need cruelty disguised as lessons. He's faced things most grown men wouldn't dare. What he needs is love and support. And what I need, Lauren cut in, is the life I deserve. I didn't sign up to be a nurse. She lifted her bag, narrowing her eyes. But don't worry, I'm not leaving empty-handed. My lawyer will speak with yours about the prenup. I know what I'm entitled to. The prenup will be honored, Rick said firmly. My counsel will contact yours Monday, but tonight we're talking about David. He pointed toward the living room, where Catherine's photo sat on the shelf, plain wooden frame. You scorn what I call family, but for me, family stays through hardship, not bolts for parties when a child cries. Lauren pressed her lips thin, then threw her final strike. Good luck with your saintly maid and janitor brother. When reality slaps you, costs, therapy, paperwork, prejudice, you'll remember me. She yanked the suitcases, wheels screeching on the wood. At the door, she paused, turned. You'll regret this. Rick stood tall, hands loose at his sides like a final marker. Maybe, but if I do, it will be because I wasn't present soon enough as a father, not because I chose my son. For the first time that night, Lauren's arrogance cracked. She blinked. Goodbye, Rick. The door slammed. The car engine faded into the distance. The house fell abruptly silent, save the hum of the air conditioner and the faint scent of roses drifting from the garden. Rick climbed the stairs, knocked softly. Paula opened. David sat on the bed, eyes wide. Is everything okay, Dad? It is, Rick said, then corrected himself. It will be, from today. He sat beside his son. I'm sorry, I wasn't with you as much as you needed. David shook his head. You're here now. Just 3 words, but they unlocked a door weighted for years. Paula looked at them and said quietly, Tomorrow, we can visit the lawyer's office to arrange medical power of attorney for me, in case of emergencies, and I know a crew who can build a casita out back if you want me closer to help. Rick turned, the exhaustion in his eyes easing. Paula, I value everything you've done for David. Tomorrow we start. I want to make your role as godmother official, with papers, not just gratitude. Paula covered her mouth, eyes brimming. That would be the greatest honor of my life. Late at night, once David slept, Rick stepped onto the back porch. Catherine's red roses flickered under the lamps. He dialed. Matthew, I'm here. I want you to come live with us. And there's more. I want you to be my partner in a bigger idea. Silence stretched, taut with breath. Rick went on. A school for special children. Catherine Carter Academy. You handle teaching, I'll run operations. We'll start small, but right. Rick, are you serious? Nevermore. Matthew exhaled, laughter breaking with fear and joy. Give me one night to think. All right, tomorrow I'll send the draft. We'll do this for David and for every child like him. Rick hung up, gazing at the roses. Beginning again, not back at the starting line, but on a different road with the right people. Morning in Austin was crystal clear. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen. Paula moved between the island and the sink the way she had for 8 years. But today something was different. Rick didn't look past her at his email. He looked directly at her, offering full gratitude. Paula, without you, I don't know where David, or I, would be. They went to the attorney's office. Rick requested, 1, a medical power of attorney granting Paula Monroe authority over David Carter's care in his absence. 2. Updated school and hospital records listing Paula as the primary caregiver. 3. The creation of a small trust for daily care expenses, with Paula as co-signer when Rick traveled. 4. Initiation of permits for building a legal casita behind the Austin home. The lawyer asked, "Are you certain about this level of trust?" Rick replied, "Completely. 8 years of service prove more than any promise." As they stepped outside, Paula leaned against the railing, hands trembling. "I don't know what to say." Rick laughed softly. "Just say, 'I accept.'" Paula wiped her eyes quickly. "I accept, and I promise I'll still remind you to sleep before midnight. Keep reminding me," he smiled. By afternoon, the construction team arrived for survey. On the iPad glowed plans for the casita, a warm studio with sliding glass doors, wide wheelchair-friendly paths, a small kitchen, a porch overlooking the rose garden. David rolled close to the table, eyes bright. "Miss Paula will be closer to me. I like that." Rick ruffled his son's dark hair. "And you'll have one more person checking your homework." That evening, a video call with Matthew. The screen showed his simple Denton kitchen, old wooden cabinets but spotless. "Rick, I've thought it over. I can move in, temporarily, but the school, it's too big." Rick leaned forward, pulling up draft slides, mission, values, a modest start. The school's name, Catherine Carter Academy for Exceptional Learners. "Step 1, Rick explained. Register as a 501c3, form a board. You, me, Paula, and if possible, Dr. Harris. Step 2, lease or buy land nearby. Design inclusive playgrounds, sensory rooms, therapy spaces. Step 3, enroll 10-15 students, scholarships covered by my fund for 2 years. Step 4, build curriculum centered on each child's experience." Matthew studied the slides. "I know what kids need: patience, slower rhythm, eye contact. But operations, licensing, compliance, I'm afraid I'm not enough." "You don't have to be everything," Rick said. "My team will cover the rest. You have what no one can learn, a heart that stays." The screen shifted to David. He wheeled himself closer, breath quick with excitement. "Uncle Matthew, if the ramps are low, I can push myself. And if the railings are rounded, they won't hurt hands. Lower sinks, too. And doors wide enough for 2 wheelchairs side by side." Matthew chuckled, eyes damp. "We've got our special advisor already." After the call, Rick fired off emails to a nonprofit law firm, an architect, and the contractor who just scouted land. In the subject line he typed, "Seed for Catherine's garden." The seed of the dream Catherine once carried. Night fell, the distant sound of saws humming the neighborhood to sleep. The casita would rise within weeks. The next day, Rick took David to Lincoln Elementary to see Matthew. The schoolyard glowed in the late sun, kids shouting over a soccer game. Matthew was sweeping leaves, but when he saw David, he dropped the broom and raised a hand for a high five like a ritual. "I'll start packing tomorrow," he said, voice choked with excitement. "I'll hand this job to the assistant here, but Rick, don't let me lose myself in a big house." Rick nodded. "I didn't invite someone else, I invited you." That evening, Paula taped a sheet to the fridge. "Things David teaches us. 1. Ask before pushing the chair. 2. Sit at eye level when speaking. 3. No pity, only respect. 4. Bedtime is sacred. 5. Roses need water, children need daily love." David read it carefully, nodded solemnly. "I approve." Everyone laughed. A week later, the casita's frame stood finished, the scent of new wood sweet in the sun. Rick stood on the porch, imagining Paula brewing coffee, David wheeling over to knock Miss Paula. Matthew sitting beside him on the steps, a new rhythm of life playing like a warm folk song. Before bed, Rick opened Catherine's letter again, pausing at the line, "Don't be afraid to start again." He closed his eyes. Starting again was not denying the past, but honoring it, by living true to what the one you loved always believed. 3 months passed as if life had been set on new rails. The casita glowed with light each evening. Paula nearby, care ran smooth as oil. Matthew had moved into the main house guest room, but from the first day he opened the windows wide, let the morning sun flood in, and placed a watering can on the back porch like a small ritual. From a distance, Rick watched his brother water each red rose and remembered Catherine's words. Every bloom is a reminder. The Catherine Carter Academy was taking its first steady steps. The 501c3 papers were filed. The architect sent designs, gentle ramps, wide corridors, automatic doors, a sensory room with soft lights and acoustic walls, a therapy wing with schedules for PT, speech, and occupational therapy. The playground had swing chairs, spring riders, wheelchair-friendly paths. Rick teased, "Special Advisor David, what's the score?" David braced on the table. 9 out of 10, -1 because the vending machine is too tall. The architect smiled, jotting a note. Understood. David was changing before their eyes. He laughed more, asked more questions, committed to morning therapy. Paula called him Mr. Advisor, while Matthew recruited him into the welcome committee for the children who would join in spring. They sat on the porch making a list of what might overwhelm newcomers: hand dryers, flickering bathroom lights, stairs. David said, "Let's put up a simple map at the entrance and paint the hallways warm colors, not stark white." Matthew nodded, writing carefully. Word of the school spread quickly through parent groups and Dr. Harris. The first 15 spots filled faster than Rick imagined. 30 more names landed on the waiting list, emails brimming with urgency, phone calls punctured by sobs from families with no options. Rick sat alone in his car, listening to each plea. Every call bolted another bar into his resolve. This school must open on time. Then December arrived, carrying a gentle chill. They decorated the Christmas tree in the living room. Matthew strung lights, Paula hung stockings, David commanded the star on top. "Dad," David asked, "when the school opens, can I help kids who get scared of crowds?" Rick placed the gold star at the tip. "You'll be the first they trust." David frowned in mock seriousness. "Then I'll raise my advisor fee. 1 hug per kid." The house rang with laughter. On Christmas Eve, 2 knocks came at the door. Rick opened it to see Lauren. No evening gown this time. She wore a gray sweater, hair tied low, a small box in her hands. "Hi, Rick. May I speak for a minute?" Rick led her to the formal sitting room, not the family space with stockings. The distance was gentle, but final. "I came to return this." Lauren opened the box, the wedding ring, and to say I'm sorry. Rick said nothing. She looked down at her bare finger. "Since leaving, I've thought a lot. When you said your happiness was being a present father, a brother, I felt scolded. But then I realized I couldn't love David. That says more about me, not him." She breathed deeply. "I'm not here to ask back. I'm here to wish you and David joy. And, if one day the school opens, could I come see?" Rick met her gaze, without bitterness. "Thank you for saying this. I wish you peace." He was about to walk her out when the sound of wheels scraped softly. David paused at the doorway, wide-eyed. "Miss Lauren, Merry Christmas." Lauren froze, then smiled, truly smiled, for the first time Rick had ever seen without thorns. "Merry Christmas, David." The boy tilted his head. "The school opens in March. If you'd like, you can come. I'll show you around on the new ramps." Lauren bit her lip, nodded. "Maybe, thank you." When the door closed, Paula placed a hand on Rick's shoulder. No words. Matthew straightened the star atop the tree, like tuning a note back into harmony. Dinner was roasted chicken and steaming mashed potatoes. Before eating, David asked to speak. "I want to thank everyone, Ms. Paula for staying, Uncle Matthew for watering flowers and listening, Dad for smiling real again, and Mom Catherine for leaving the letter that started everything." That night, after David slept, Rick opened the project timeline. Foundation poured before New Year's. Steel frame in January. Interiors by February, opening in March. In the staffing column, special ed teachers, speech therapist, PT, part-time counselor. Under culture, Rick typed one more bullet. Sit at a child's eye level. He smiled. A simple rule. Catherine, Paula, Matthew, and David would all remind each other if ever forgotten. Before turning off the lights, Rick stepped onto the porch. The rose garden gleamed under the night dew. On the leveled patch of soil, where the academy would rise, the wind carried the scent of fresh earth. He closed his eyes, and it was as if he heard Matthew's acoustic guitar, David's wheelchair wheels, Paula's kettle, and a gentle voice from memory. "Catherine, don't be afraid to start again." "I'm not afraid anymore," Rick whispered. The seed had sprouted, and spring, just a few pages away on the calendar, was coming. On the 10th week after filing, Catherine Carter Academy hit its first curve. An email from the city planning office read, "Community hearing required due to neighborhood feedback." The reasons listed: noise, traffic, parking, and impact on property values. Rick read it, gripping his phone tight. This was exactly the reality Lauren once threw in his face. But he wasn't the same Rick from months ago. He went to the hearing. The ward hall was small, walls lined with photos of Congress Avenue Bridge and Lady Bird Lake. Residents packed the seats. First to speak was an older man with silver hair, Mr. Whitaker. "I've lived here 30 years. This plan will worsen morning congestion. Kids yelling, ambulances coming and going, peace gone." A woman in a floral blouse added, "We're not against children, but a special needs school means emergencies all the time. I worry." Rick rose, introduced himself briefly, outlined the school's mission. He spoke of gentle ramps, automatic doors, sensory rooms, then paused, giving the floor to Matthew. His brother stepped up, holding a small yellow watering can, his familiar tool. "My name is Matthew Carter. I used to be the kid this neighborhood didn't want to see. I was a slow learner. Adults said I was a nuisance, but there was a janitor then." She crouched low, met my eyes, and said, "You're still a person, Matthew." From then on, I stayed with kids who need more time. Matthew didn't posture. His voice was calm, like watering plants. "A school done right doesn't make more noise than a park. We'll stagger drop-off hours, have a separate gate for therapy vans, and a dedicated parking lot. And if noise is still a concern, we'll invest in acoustic walls." He set the watering can on the podium, smiling. "When you water the right spot, the garden doesn't overflow." Then Paula spoke, without notes. "For 8 years I've cared for a boy named David. When the world spins fast, we slow down. Ask before pushing his chair. Sit eye to talk. Don't pity. Just respect. This school is how we scale those practices. If you fear traffic, we'll schedule it. If you fear noise, we'll design for quiet." She paused, scanning the room. "You're afraid because you don't know. Come visit the site, talk with David. Fear often dissolves when we name it. A hand rose at the back. A brown-haired woman, Monica Green, introduced herself. I live one street over. My son, Ethan, is autistic. We've tried 3 schools where promises broke. I dream of a place where he isn't rushed to beat the bell. You talk property values. I talk about the value of hope. Mr. Gies, Carter's rose garden doesn't make noise, and a child's laughter, if loud, is a sound we need. The tension softened. Still, Planning Officer Ms. Rivera reminded, 2 issues remain: 8A slope compliance for the main ramp and parking setback. The architect stood. We'll fix within a week. Ms. Rivera nodded. If revised plans meet code, I'll recommend approval. As the meeting closed, Mr. Whitaker approached Rick. I have a grandson with autism, he admitted, eyes gentler. I was harsh before because I didn't understand. If you truly keep order, I won't oppose. The awkward handshake loosened a knot. The next day, the ADA issue was clear. The contractor had built the ramp at 110 instead of the required 112, too steep. Rick called him directly. Fix it now. Costs come from your budget. The contractor argued. You never said. Rick cut him off. ADA code doesn't need reminding. He stood under the Texas sun, watching crews cut back the ramp, pour new concrete, grind slip-resistant surfaces, add rounded rails from David's suggestion. Sweat ran down his back, but his chest felt lighter. This was responsibility, not rhetoric. That afternoon, Monica Green stopped by. She brought an envelope. This is a small matching grant from my family foundation, $50,000, provided you commit to transparency and welcome community co-funding. Rick froze. He hadn't asked anyone for a cent. He thought he'd shoulder it all. Monica shook her head. Let the community own it too. That way, when critics speak up, others will stand with you. A week later, revised plans were submitted. Mr. Rivera's email came. Approved with conditions. Approval granted contingent on noise monitoring at dismissal hours and traffic reports after Q1. Rick read it aloud at dinner. David slapped the side of his chair, cheering, yes. Matthew sat down, exhaling. I feared this moment would never come. Paula placed a warm pie on the table. Once fear is named, it takes form, and can be solved. That night, Rick sat alone on the porch. The red roses bloomed like small flames. He remembered Lauren's cruel words, then the lock on the approval email clicking open. Between rejection and acceptance stood people. Matthew, Paula, David, Ms. Rivera, Monica Green, even Mr. Whitaker. That was the extended family Catherine must have envisioned. Not just blood, but hands willing to hold. A March morning opened clear like a blessing. The sign, Catherine Carter Academy for Exceptional Learners, gleamed against bright brick walls. Sloping ramps, automatic doors, warm-toned hallways, a sensory room with curtains drawn for gentle light. The playground held shaded corners, looping ramps, swing chairs waiting for first flights. In the garden, a new bed of red roses mirrored the one at Rick's home. A bridge from past to present. The ribbon stretched across the schoolyard. Local press gathered. Ms. Rivera stood nearby, nodding. Good job. Monica Green hugged Ethan, headphones muffling sound, eyes wide with curiosity. Dr. Harris smiled at Rick. Rarely have I seen a new school begin by listening this well. Matthew, in a blue shirt, trembled slightly. Paula pinned a red rose to his chest. Don't be nervous, she whispered. Just water plants as always. Today, water with words. David was the one to cut the ribbon. He wheeled forward, Rick behind him, hand resting lightly on the chair as support. "Ready, son? Always ready," David grinned. As he pulled the ribbon, applause burst. At the gate, apart from the crowd, stood Lauren. No gown, only a beige coat, eyes glistening as David raised the ribbon high. She didn't enter, only watched. The speeches were brief. Rick spoke of Catherine's letter, of the line, "Don't be afraid to start again." He pointed to the ramps. "Every slope here is a late apology from me to my son, and to children like him." Matthew spoke of meeting children eye to eye, of slowing down to listen, of peace built into design. Paula lifted her certificate as godmother. Everyone laughed. She held it aloft like a small trophy. "This is the title I treasure most." Children streamed into classrooms. Within minutes, a boy named Alex panicked at a balloon bursting outside, clutching his ears, breath ragged. Staff guided him into the quiet room. Soft lights, acoustic walls, a cocoon chair. Matthew crouched to eye level, speaking slowly. "We'll wait until your heartbeat calms." Rick watched through glass. No shouting, no calm down, only breathing together. Minutes later, Alex breathed evenly, looked up, nodded. His first lesson wasn't on the board. It was in how adults acted. Out in the yard, Ethan edged toward the swing chair. David rolled beside him, showing him the harness. "Do you want high or low?" "Low first," Ethan whispered. From a distance, Monica clenched her hands, but smiled as her son swung, within the bounds he chose. Sometimes happiness was simply choosing your own height. By midday, Lauren entered through the gate, pausing at the rosebed. Paula approached. They looked at each other, no thorns left. "Beautiful," Lauren said. "Catherine loved red roses," Paula answered. "We planted more here to remind us love is daily work." Lauren nodded, eyes damp. "You learned that too late." David wheeled over, hand lifted. "Want a quick tour? I'll guide you on the new ramps." Lauren smiled. "An honor." They passed warm halls, the sensory room, a reading nook with a poster. Sit at a child's eye level. Lauren brushed the poster lightly, as if touching a reminder. "You must be proud of your dad," she murmured. David shrugged. "He's proud of me." Lauren laughed, unguarded for the first time. At the door, she stopped. "Thank you." Just 3 words, enough to close a thorny chapter. By day's end, Ms. Rivera signed the temporary handover. "I'll return in Q1 to check noise and traffic reports." Rick shook her hand. "Thank you for being hard on us." "Hard makes it better," she replied. Monica Green unveiled a plaque. Matching grant goal met. The community had raised enough to expand scholarships. Mr. Whitaker appeared, laying a bouquet of tulips on the reception desk. "For my grandson and the others." As sunset fell, Matthew watered the new rosebed. Water soaked into soil, fragrance rising clean. Rick stood beside him. They stayed silent for a while. "Day 1, Rick said. "Day 1, Matthew echoed. Inside, the sound of wheels and children's laughter mingled with the strum of a guitar from the music room. A garden watered, a new season begun. A month passed. Noise reports came back stable. Traffic dispersed thanks to staggered drop-off hours. Classrooms found their rhythm. Picture storytelling, music therapy, morning PT, bulletin boards lined with posters saying, "Sit at eye level." Alex was no longer afraid of balloons. Ethan loved the low swing, gradually going higher. David was busy with his special advisor schedule, teaching how to use ramps, sharing no-pain push tips, hosting quiet hour after lunch. Evenings, family dinners on the casita porch became routine. Paula brought fragrant casserole. Matthew set his watering can under his chair. Rick poured lemonade. Today, I helped Nora unlock her wheel locks by herself, David boasted. She hugged me twice. Matthew laughed. And did you remember your advisor fee? One hug, David said, and a rose sticker. Lauren sometimes stopped by, not as a wife, just an adult learning how to be near in the right way. She watched Ethan swing, listened to Paula talk about children's sleep, learned when not to correct. Each time, she left quieter, her heels softer on the tiles. No one asked her to become anything else. Clear boundaries made space to breathe. One Friday evening, Rick brought out an envelope. Rose Fund, he said. Scholarships in Catherine's name. 10 a year for families in need. Monica Green agreed to match in the first year. Paula touched the flap, eyes wet. Catherine would be proud. Matthew nodded. We're watering more than our own garden. Weekend, the school hosted Family Day. Handwritten name tags on the table. A quiet corner with headphones, cocoon chairs. A sign reading, Take a break when you need. Rick opened. Today, there are no tests, only experiences. Parents tried the ramps, sat in wheelchairs, rolled over mock thresholds to feel the snag at door edges. Mr. Whitaker sat, pushed one round, breathless but laughing. My eyes are open. His son, holding a little boy, nodded at Rick. Thank you for persevering. In the music room, Matthew strummed guitar while kids shook shakers to the beat. David sat beside Ethan. Each time Ethan hesitated, David nodded. Slow is okay. In another corner, Paula showed parents how to lift and place children in chairs without pain. Everything ran like a warm meal, not perfect, but in rhythm. At dusk, Lauren brought a small red rose bush. She said simply, For the school garden. Paula accepted, planted it with a sign planted by Lauren, and told her, Thank you for one action. Lauren left without applause. It was enough. That night, the family ate on the back porch, Rick, David, Paula, Matthew. On the table, pizza, salad, cinnamon candles. Can I make a toast? David asked. Yes, Rick nodded. The boy raised his lemonade glass. I want to celebrate my chosen family. Ms. Paula, for staying. Uncle Matthew, for meeting me eye to eye. Dad, for starting over the right way. And Mom Catherine, for planting roses and writing the letter. He drew a breath. And for the friends who will come next year. I promise I'll guide them on the new ramps. Laughter clinked with glasses. Rick looked at his son, then at Paula and Matthew. He remembered that blazing noon, the wheelchair rolling into sunlight, the word burden dropped like a stone. If time rewound, he'd tell himself, don't wait longer. But he also knew, sometimes the right road only appears when you dare leave the wrong one. Late at night, spring air touched the garden. Matthew watered roses, humming a folk tune. Paula checked David's meds, added a red rose sticker to his workbook. David, in his room, wrote the last line of his essay. Family is those who stay when you move slower than the world. Rick stood at the door, reading over his shoulder, not changing a word. He stepped out to the porch, gazing at 2 rose beds, one at home, one at school, both red in the night. He thought of Lauren, not with anger, but with hope she too had learned not to hurt when unable to love. He thought of Monica Green, Ms. Rivera, Mr. Whitaker, those who stood beside when it mattered. And he thought of Catherine. If she were here, maybe she'd smile and say, see, starting again doesn't mean from the beginning. It means turning onto the road you should have taken all along, with the right people. Rick picked up the ribbon-cutting scissors he had saved, placed them in the old wooden box, shut the lid with a firm click. Then he turned off the lights one by one. In the warm dark, David's steady breathing, Matthew's faint guitar, and the roses outside kept blooming. like humble love at work, daily, quietly, steadfast, and just loud enough for those willing to listen. And so, the journey of Rick Carter, young David, with Paula and Matthew, closed in a new beginning, where love and patience outlasted neglect and selfishness. The school named after Catherine Carter was not only a gift to David, but a hope for countless special children. Proof that family is not only blood, but those who choose to stay through the hardest moments. What do you think of this message? Could chosen family sometimes matter even more than blood? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share to spread its message, and subscribe for more meaningful stories.